Snow hardens to glass over the river, strangling its voice. Breath steams white in the high pints and vanishes. Hooves thud, then halt as a shadow heavier than winter pools at the ford. The air tastes of iron. Horses scream. Blades flash, blue for one instant, then dim. The valley's warm lights blink and die, one by one. Ash drifts on the cold current. A horn calls once, thin and lonely, and is cut short. If this kind of journey grips the heart, a like and a subscription help the story travel farther. Let the comments carry where viewers are watching from, and which path they would choose if they stood upon a frozen road with darkness ahead. A cook stands over a pot in a quiet kitchen where steam clouds the windows, and she does not notice when her ladle stops in mid-stir. She has never heard an ancient river fall silent. Now she has never seen the flames in the hall waver as if they are listening for some older command. Further down the passage, a stable boy hurries with a blanket for a shivering pony and feels the floor tremble as if under a giant step. He tells himself it is thunder. Thunder does not wear iron. Above them, in a room open to the starlit air, a healer leans over a pale hobbit and frowns at a scar that should be fading, a wound that should be almost a memory by now. The hobbit's friend sits with a blanket over his shoulders and a stubborn set to his jaw. He has fallen asleep with his hand near his master's, as if even in slumber he refuses to let go. Through the doorway passes a tall figure with the bearings of old kings in his stride, and a blade whose shards wait for their true song. He pauses, and his eyes shift to the window when the first cry from the ford rises, bares teeth, and breaks. In the hall, where maps spread like rivers of ink and candle wax pools into amber lakes, councillors argue quietly over routes and seasons. A prince of the woodland leans one shoulder against a carved pillar, listening, his eyes like winter light through beech leaves. A dwarf from the lonely mountain traces a line south with a thick finger and does not say how many times he has heard silence in stone. Voices lift and fall, weave and break. The talk is of distant fires, of men on the marches of Gondor who dream of seabirds and wake to smoke, of riders out of the mark whose horses shy at shadows no torch can push back. He should be here to settle it. He is not. Where is the wandering wizard with his staff and his sudden laughter? Where is the one who can turn failure into a road? There is a chill in the absence. The air smells of snow. At the eastern edge of the valley, 9 shadows glide along the bank like a sentence passed long ago. They do not whisper. They have no weight, yet frost crackles at their feet. The first steps out into the river's embrace, and the river recoils, seized from within by a will that knows the taste of springs. Black glass climbs up like a hand closing. The ward that lives with the water rises. Foam, light, memory of horses and laughter, and, seized in iron cold, shatters into teeth that the darkness swallows without flinching. On the ridge above, a silver banner stirs where there is no wind. An old song begins in a language that can bind wounds and break open mornings. It falters when the ice creaks. A figure stands with a ring the color of clear sky hidden under his sleeve and gathers every warm room, every hearth, every young voice in this valley and presses them into one pulse. He sets it against the cold coming up the gorge. The cold does not stop. It remembers an older master and smiles without a mouth. What hand stilled the river to a blade? What treachery learned the name of a valley's heart and spoke it back to break it? Down in the stables, the boy drops the blanket when the door bursts wide, and hard-faced men in black mail pour in with their eyes like pits. He tries to run. Someone shoves him. He lands in hay that smells of comfort, looks up, and sees a face pale as old bone under a hood bend over him. He does not understand the word that is breathed, but he feels it thread through his limbs and pull. Night slides forward like a knife. The first of the 9 is across. The other shadows gather, step by thin step, eyes glittering with old hunger. The ford stones crack. A horse that never should have come near that water rears and takes its rider into the snow. On the north side of the house, an elf draws a bow. His arrow hums. He lets out a breath and feels it freeze as it touches the world. Elladan and Elrohir run to the ridge with 10 others at their back. "The wards are failing," Elrohir says, and pulls a slender blade from a sheath carved with hawks. "No," Elladan says, and the word is both denial and command. Together they begin a chant, each note braided to the next, a net cast not into the water, but into time, and calling for dawn that has not yet been thought of. The shadow at the head of the crossing does not raise a hand to cast back that net. It lifts its gaze and looks directly into the mind of the one on the ridge, whose ring shines with starlight hidden in skin. "You remember me," the dark gaze says, without words, with a blade in memory rather than in hand. "And I remember you." In the house, a slender woman with night in her hair and morning in her eyes turns and walks away from the balcony where she had been watching the first snowflakes drift toward the pines. She is as calm as moonlight. Her hands do not shake. She descends stairs that have held laughter and dance and 1,000 gentle steps. And her light steps this night sound like the tread of a captain to those who hear. She passes a kitchen where a pot has boiled onto the hearthstones, and the cook leans on the table, clutching a knife and praying in a whisper. "Gather your children and go to the western door," the woman says, without breaking stride. The cook looks up. She knows that voice. She nods, sweeps 2 small faces to her, and runs. Other feet run now, at last. Running is an answer. Running is a prayer. Aragorn, son of Arathorn, draws a broken sword from his belt and curses everything that kept its shards from singing sooner. To the eastern postern, he tells the hobbit with dark curls who is struggling to sit up. "Can you stand?" The hobbit's name is Frodo. He answers by getting to his feet and swaying. The one with the blanket has already taken his arm. "I can carry him, if—" he begins, and Aragorn shakes his head. "You can carry the pack," he says. "He will carry himself. I will carry him if it kills me," the smaller one says, with more anger than truth. It does not yet. In the courtyard, Glorfindel is light and fire, and a sword that sings in the winter air. Those who have seen him fight say later that it was as if a memory of autumn burned through snow, and for a time the cold held back. He leaps from stair to banister to flagstone, impossible, terrible, beautiful, and where he lands, orcs do not rise. He reaches the first of the 9 as it steps from the far bank, and the air around both of them bleeds a sound that causes the stable boy farther down in the stalls to clamp his hands over his ears and sob. "Back," Glorfindel says, and his words are a wind. The Nazgul's answer is the absence of all names. From the south, with the smell of mule and wet leather, comes a man with the white tree stitched at his breast, a fur-lined cloak thrown over mail. He has ridden since the towers of his city fell away behind him, and and the hills of the wild rose like a question ahead. He is tired enough to dream while awake. He sees the flaring light of a valley that should not be on fire and is not slow to consider. He is Boromir, son of the steward. He spurs forward. He thinks he is too late. He is. In a forest of pillars and carved lintels and books that have never known dust, a council that should have been wakes and knocks over its chairs, Legolas and Gimli stand back to back as men in black scale come through the arcades like floodwater, and the iron forest of their spears grows. We have to move them, Mark, Gimli says, eyes already on the high hallway that leads west. There is a way, Legolas says. He nods to the woman by the underline of a fountain, who is standing as if listening to a whisper in the stone. She knows it. Arwen turns and walks toward the hobbits. You will come with me, she says to Frodo. Aragorn, keep them between. We will take the path that was cut for those who do not want to be found. The North Shelf, Aragorn says. His eyes flick to her face, to the hall behind, to the door ahead, to the men gathering weapons in the courtyard. He knows how narrow that shelf is. He knows how ice comes early there. The river is gone, she says. The river is different. The North Shelf is what remains. How long can the wards hold? Legolas asks, not to anyone in particular, to the air, perhaps to memory. A horn blows again, closer. Elladan and Elrohir fall back step by step, their voices raw now, faces strained. The ring's power spreads like thin gold hammered too far. At the ford below, Glorfindel has not fallen. He has met the Witch King in the streambed under the shreds of broken ice, and he is a light that hurts those who see it. Those who see it begin to hope for a heartbeat. Then the light flares, sears, and dims, as if a hand closed around it and squeezed. He does not cry out. He collapses forward upon his enemy with the last habit of a warrior, and they go down locked together. When the shadow rises again, it is ragged. It is laughing without any sound. It looks up toward the bridge. Snow begins to fall in sheets so thick that the world up there becomes a parchment with white ink. They climb the narrow path that hugs the western wall of the valley. A line of figures with a small shape wrapped in a grey cloak in the middle. The wind cuts at hands and faces. The rock under their boots is lacework with ice. The shadows on the far bank below flow like oil. Those shadows climb. Pippin, who is lighter than he should be, who can find humour in almost anything on most days, slips and would have gone if Samwise had not been there with one hand on his sleeve, swearing under his breath as only a gardener forced to winter can swear. Foot by foot, Master Pippin, Sam says. Do not look down. Pippin looks down. He looks up again fast. Behind them, the kitchen woman runs with two children, their small hands sticky with honey and terror. She does not know her way on these paths the way those born here do. She slips at a bend and goes to her knees, and a dark shape drops in front of her like a shadow that grew teeth. She raises the kitchen knife. She turns the children away. A ranger appears from behind a spur of rock and drives his blade under the orc's chin before it can lower its spear. He hauls the cook to her feet. West, he says. Stay near the wall. She looks at him and recognizes him by the lines around his eyes and the way his hands always moved when he was calm, as if learning measure. Mael Chon, she says, and would weep with relief if she had time. Later, Elladan will ask Maelchon what door in the cliff face he unlocked with fingers that knew a pattern no mortal had been taught. Later, he will ask whether that pattern was given or overheard. Later, Maelchon will answer with a story about a child with dark hair and quick hands, and a voice that sang louder than its fear. That story will be too late. They reach the high notch above the valley, where the path narrows to the width of one set of shoulders. Snow smears into fog, and the wind becomes a hand pushing against their chests. To go forward means the west and the low land beyond the mountains. To go back means smoke and iron. Arwen turns to Aragorn. "We cannot fight here," she says. "We can fall here. Those are the only choices." "Then we do not fall," he says, and his jaw sets in the way those who follow him have learned means a road will be found. He moves them along the wall one at a time, an arm around the hobbit, the dwarf with careful steps, the prince of the wood like a bird stepping along a fence under storm. Are the two young men from the kitchens carrying small children who do not scream, because screaming will make the watchful things on the far bank look up and find them. On the ledge above them, a horn sounds again, very close. Elladan and Elrohir appear at the mouth of the high pass, blood on their gloves, snow in their hair. "Hold them here," Elrohir says, already turning to face the shadows at his heels. "I will make them pay," the Witch King says to no one, to air that remembers his name, to the river that does not answer him because it cannot. Arwen begins to sing. It is not a battle song, it is a lullaby. It is the kind of song sung to send children to sleep, and the way she sings it this night grows spears of ice in the throats of those who hear. The shadows pause, as if the memory in the melody is not theirs, but the world's. As if even hunger can be made to remember gentleness and feel shame. They pause for a step. It is enough. Under that cover they go. Snow drives at their faces. The mountain opens its hand to let them through. Behind, a tall figure in a dark cloak with white threads at the hem looks over a shoulder one last time at the house where he has filled rooms with laughter. He sees a shape like fire turn to ash in the courtyard. He does not say a name. He goes. Behind him, at the ford, the last of the 9 steps onto the high bank, and the air above the river becomes a mouth saying yes to loss. At dawn, when the storm has blown itself out, and the light comes like a cold blade across the peaks, a single black pennon hangs from the pinnacle of a roof that no longer has a room under it. The stable boy, whose name is Talf, and who will later grow into a man with strong hands and eyes that look at the sky when the wind shifts, lies under a manger with 3 other shapes huddled into him. He wakes to silence, that perfect silence that comes after fear as sometimes after music. He does not know he can move. He thinks he has become part of the wood. Then a hand touches his shoulder, and an elf with blood frozen in a thread at the corner of his mouth says, "Up," and does not ask if he can. Out on the greenway, Boromir reins in and stares at a column of smoke climbing into the winter sun. His horse stamps and lowers its head, gasping. He has never cared for the northern air that bites like stone, but he breathes it in now because he cannot breathe anything else. He kicks into a gallop, and the world narrows to the rhythm of muscle and the heat against his knees. In the shadows of a birch stand, he nearly rides down a boy carrying a lantern, then realizes there is nothing in the lantern to light. "What happened?" he says, and the boy shakes his head. "They came," he says. "They came like they already knew where our doors were." The question goes with Boromir when he finds Elladan and Elrohir with their faces grey and their voices low, binding wounds, counting living, lifting bodies. Who stilled the river? He asks, because he does not know the words to ask who killed the light who stood in it. How did they know the way through glens that elves keep only in song? Elrohir wipes his hands on snow and looks toward the east, where the sun is as cold as the moon. There is a mind in the south that has been listening to us talk to each other, he says. There is a mind nearer that has been answering with a voice not its own. Anger turns to ice when it must wait. We will not wait. Where is he? Boromir says. Where is the halfling who wears... He stops because he has been polite up until now, and because the words feel wrong in the mouth of a stranger who has come late. He swallows. Where are your people going? West, Elrond says. They will cross the passes if winter will let them. If it will not, they will go under the mountain. Help us gather those who can stand, he adds, because he can see the fire in the man's eyes, and he needs such fire next to him for the next hour. And then ride. Find them if you can. If you cannot, hold the road. Make it hard for those behind them. There are more, under the mountain. The dwarves of the north nod, eyes alight. Gimli's heart beats faster, not with joy, not with dread, but with the kind of longing that has nothing to do with liking. Khazad-dûm, he says under his breath, and he feels in his bones as if the old halls just raise their heads to listen. South of the mountains, a white-robed figure with a voice as smooth as a cold river lays a hand upon a sphere veiled in cloth and speaks as if to a hesitant horse. The cloth flares, then darkens. He closes his eyes. He does not see a valley of laughter caught in ice. He sees only what he is allowed to see. A ring of fire, a hand that is not his, a road. He knows a word in the old tongue that can thicken water, slow breath, tighten sinew. He whispers it the way a bully whispers the promise of pain. Far to the north, a river goes quiet. He smiles without humor. He has done what was asked. He will ask a price. On the high pass, the wind claws at faces, and the stones give under boots like bread that was not baked enough. We cannot keep this pace, Legolas says, when the rope in his hands goes slack, and he realizes the one behind him foolishly tried to be brave and not grab with both hands. We can, if we choose to live, Aragorn says. And then, there. He points to a shadow in rock that to anyone else would look like nothing but rock. It is a seam in the mountain where the snow lies thinner, an old path pressed into place by feet that did not need light to see. Arwen touches the stone, her palm open. The rock is cold as grief. Beyond this notch, she says, the way goes down, then turns to ice. We will have to slide and pray that our bones hold. She turns, looks at Frodo. Can you do it? She says. He nods in the slow, deliberate way of those who have decided their answer before being asked. With help, he says. Samwise says, he can do it with my hand in his back. They go down the seam of ice like children risking joy on a slope, but there is no laughter. Breath comes in gasps and curses. Twice someone spins and almost goes into the whiteness that waits with the patience of a lifetime. Twice a rope goes taut and two pairs of hands dig in and hold. At the bottom of the seam, the mountain opens into a bowl where the wind is less cruel. They take an hour there, under a rock that juts like a brow. We cannot light a fire, Aragorn says. We would call what we do not want. He gives his cloak to Frodo when he does not ask if he should. Arwen arranges the cloak around the small shoulders with a precision that is not decoration. Her eyes meet Aragorn's over that small bent head. She does not say the thing both of them are thinking. If this child falls, the winter becomes permanent. They make it to the western eaves with shadows behind them thickening like a bruise. They do not go toward the Redhorn Gate. The peaks between the Westward Vale and the Dimrill Dale are too full of wind that will not allow steps, and stone that will not accept weight. Under, Gimli says. Under, he says again, and the word feels like a door opening. Under, Aragorn agrees, because their choice is winter's choice at this point. Arwen stands very still, listening. It will not be stone that kills us there, she says. It will be something older than stone. They come to the Dimrill Gate at a dusk that is more like the world's whole breath taken in. The lake lies like a mirror beyond the gate, and the mirror is dark. The doors, carved with runes and leaves, are closed, and under the thin drift of ice on the water, something moves. Gimli steps forward, and his voice lowers as if he entered a sanctuary. Here the king's road goes under, he says, and he is both sad and full of a fierce tenderness. How did they call it open? Legolas asks. He has no patience for doors that play at hiding. Arwen touches the stone where a star has been cut. With courtesy and memory, she says, and she sings a few notes very softly. The stone seems to pause, then sighs. It opens. The smell that comes out is not rot. It is older even than that. It is time. They go in. They always would have. Perhaps if the world had gone differently that autumn, a light would have gone before them, and a voice would have turned fear into laughter at the worst times. That voice is not here. They take their fear in the hands and carry it. They hear drums. Something very far down inside the mountain hears them and smiles with a heat that never takes warmth. Back in the valley that was called the last homely house, the last horses are brought out and turned loose, because to try to lead them would be to break them, and none here will do that. In the library, a map burns, and the blazing rivers of ink curl and shrivel. In the hall of dance, where feet have been light for generations, one last harp string vibrates once when the roof beam falls and snaps like a voice cut off. Outside those ruins, Elladan kneels beside a body with hair like gold. Elrohir pries a hand from a sword that has suited it so perfectly that the palm will forever remember its weight. They do not weep where others can see them. Later, on alone, they will. Boromir stands on the ridge and watches smoke move like weather. He knows what it is to watch from a wall. He does not know what it is to watch the wall itself die. He turns his horse and looks west, where the mountains are splitting the sky. Under, he says to himself, because he has heard the dwarf's hunger in his memory, and because he knows something of old places that will not let go of those who go in. Under, and he kicks his horse into a steadier pace with a new weight in his chest that he would not name fear. The mountain swallows the light. Their footsteps become the world. They move along galleries with carvings like ribs and columns, like standing trees caught mid-sway. Once they pass under a hole in the ceiling where the sky is a coin's worth of night, and stars that do not care whether this company lives or dies look back. There were gardens here once, Gimli says, and his voice is strange, almost a whisper, as if talking loud would hurt the walls. Rills and stone flowers. Work that was joy, not just labor. Where did their joy go? Pippin whispers, before he remembers what noise means here. He claps a hand over his mouth, as if he can stuff the words back down his throat. Buried under what came, Aragorn says, and his voice is gentler than the words. We make new joy where we can, and hope it lasts until it has to be buried and remembered. There is a chamber where the dwarves stopped singing, even in their minds. It is full of bones from 2 different battles that happened in 2 different ages. The drums that have been a heartbeat in the stone become hands slapping the skin of something that is no instrument. A door gives way. The thing that pushes through is not a shadow. It is not a creature of this age. It is the memory of a world that burned and refused to become ash. They fight in the way that small, determined people have always fought against things that would take away names. They fall back into a room where a toppled chair and a broken table look almost comic next to the thing pulling itself out of the dark. A spear goes into a troll's throat and comes out with sound attached. Gimli laughs when a stroke of his axe bites something that bleeds and is not shadow or fire. Legolas' arrow finds an eye, and the thing screams like a mountain does when it lets go of snow. Merry dies there. He dies the way a good lad dies when he is in the wrong story and decides to make it his to the very end. He is between Samwise and a blade coming at Samwise's, back before anyone can count to 1. The blade sinks. He flinches. His face looks surprised, and then calm, as if he has found the right answer on a test he did not know he was taking. "Tell Pippin," he says, and cannot finish. Sam's hands are red and useless. "No," Sam says, and the word is a house he wants to shelter everything under. "No, no, no." The word does not hold. Aragorn puts his hand on the small chest and feels the last beat. His face is the face of a man who has walked into winter and discovered that it was always waiting to meet him. He closes Merry's eyes. "We have to keep moving," he says, with a voice that is not steady, because steady is not possible. "We will carry him, if we can. If we cannot, we will carry him in our mouths when we tell the story after." They back into a great hall with a floor like a river of shadow and pillars like trunks of trees older than sleep. The thing that comes after them now is not interested in the little pieces. It wants the song the small creature carries, wants the light that walks beside him. It comes across a bridge that is far too narrow for dignity, trailing sparks like a comet. Its shadow lifts its own hands, and a laugh that has not been laughed since the world was new becomes the light's answer. Arwen steps forward. She has no staff. She has no ancient sword. She has a name and a memory, and the stubbornness of those who choose mortals and sorrow. She looks at the thing and straightens as if the light in her is taller than her body. "You cannot have him," she says. Her voice enters the stone, and the stone quivers. The bridge under the thing's feet trembles. The thing does not stop. It has forgotten how. Aragorn grabs her arm. "No," he says, and she does not look at him. She takes his hand and places it on Frodo's shoulder. "Lead him out," she says, "and do not let him look back for me." Her eyes on him then are all the years he could have had. They are not promises. They are a goodbye that does not waste time pretending otherwise. She lifts her hands and sings. The song is not gentle now. It is a line that runs between darkness and light and refuses to be owned by either. The air shudders. The bridge shakes. The fire in the thing hesitates. It has known a voice like this before and lost to it. It has also won. It does not fear because it cannot. It simply advances. "Go," she says. And the command carries farther than her voice should carry. They go. They stumble. They do not look back because some are strong and obey, and some are weak, and a strong hand pushes their head forward. Frodo goes with tears freezing on his face before they can fall. Sam stumbles and sobs and runs. Legolas does not breathe for 3 heartbeats, because breathing would mean crying out her name. Gimli swears in the language of stone that breaks, and he can only speak curses that honor. Arwen and the thing meet on the bridge. She looks small against it. She looks like a candle flame that refuses wind. Her song rises, and the bridge under the thing's feet cracks like ice on a stream. It takes another step. She steps toward it, as if closing distance can be love. The bridge gives. The world makes a noise like 2 mountains colliding. They fall, a fire and star together, into dark that does not laugh but smiles. The sound does not stop when they reach the far side. The mountain shakes. Dust falls like old snow. Aragorn stumbles and catches himself on a column. He does not shout. He's too empty to shout. He keeps moving. There is no time to stop here, to make the mountain listen to their raw throats. There will be time later to understand that she is gone. There will be time, and there will not. They come out on the east side of the mountain under a sky that looks as if it does not care. The sun is low. The dale lies still under its thin winter. Water runs at the lake's lip with a sound like a throat that has been singing too long. They stop because there is no other choice. Frodo sits on a rock and holds his face in his hands. The air on this side is no warmer than the other. That it is simply air that has not heard certain songs yet. Legolas walks a few steps from the company and looks at the trees toward the south. He cannot see the forest from here. He can feel it. There is softness in that direction, and a watchful gaze that is not hostile. He draws a breath. "We are not alone," he says. "Not yet." Inside the golden wood, a queen in a white gown that looks like frost woven into silk stands at a mirror that is not water and sees a valley burning and a bridge breaking and a woman falling into dark like a star. She closes her eyes and holds that pain in. When she opens them, a river moves under her gaze. She turns and calls. "Haldir," she says, and the name carries through the leaves as if the leaves are mouths repeating it. "Take your brothers and go to the Dimrill Dale. There is grief coming that we must lift." "Will they bring the ring?" Haldir asks. His voice does not tremble. It is the kind of voice that loves order and sunlight on grass and does not go under mountains if it can help it. "They will bring sorrow," she says. "It is the same weight. We will carry it." To the south, in a hall that has grown dim and old under a pale-eyed councillor's whisper, a king leans on the arm of his chair and dreams while standing still. He does not see the storm building over the gap. He dreams of a river that has gone silent and a valley that was a home to his father's friends. If he could wake, he would send riders. He cannot wake, not yet. On a high pinnacle of black stone in the circle of 7 walls above a sparkling river, a man with lined eyes and a proud mouth sits with a globe of glass under his hand and feels his son's heart as if it were his own. He sees a green land under stone towers and a boat crossing water when there are no oars. He sees a beacon that does not need fire to flame. He feels loss coming like a hunter, and he does what cornered hearts do. He makes himself into something that bites. The golden wood receives them with a softness that hurts more than stone. Haldir is courteous and stern. There is a law, he says, because he has to say it. None may enter. He looks over Aragorn's shoulder and sees a small figure with a face like a pale leaf. He sees another whose face is as if a piece of rock under frost had decided it would be gentle for a while. His voice softens. There are times when law makes itself new for those who do not want to break it. Come. They cross the river. The air smells of moss and living wood. Frodo takes a breath, and for a moment the thing in his pocket that has become an extra heartbeat seems quieter, as if it cannot bear this kind of watching. Galadriel looks at each of them, and her gaze does not destroy. It weighs. So, she says, and the word is both greeting and welcome. So, and Aragorn, who has lost something that he had not allowed himself to admit was his, bows his head and cannot speak. She does not tell him to be comforted. She gives him a small green stone held in a net of silver and says, "This remembers light, and it remembers hands that made. Carry it." He takes it and feels as if a hand he knows has touched him on the face. He tries not to cry. He is not a boy. He fails. To Frodo, she gives a small glass with a light that is not fire. When all other light goes out, she says. She does not say what it will be like when all other light goes out. She knows. The company sleeps under song that is both lullaby and lament. Sam holds his hands in fists as if he can hold his friend's life inside them. Legolas stands watch and listens to the leaves argue gently about winter. Gimli sits with his back against a tree, and the tree does not love him as the mountain would, but it is kind. Boromir, riding with Elladan and Elrohir, sees the golden wood's light and tightens his jaw, because stories told to frighten children say nothing true. He sees grief in the faces of those who meet him at the border, and he understands in that instant that the straight road he wanted there to be is gone forever. He dismounts and bows, not because it is caught, but because something in him is wrenched into respect. He sees Frodo the next day. He does not kneel. He does not beg. He sits across from the small figure and talks about the river of his city and how in spring the sailors sing. He does not talk about the bridge he morning would have walked with his brother. He listens to the hobbit talk about gardens and belonging and a food that is good, cold, or hot. He laughs, and the sound hurts him. The world must have such things when this is done, he says, and almost reaches and pulls his hand back. He is not a thief, he is a soldier. He forgets that soldiers want things too. In Isengard, Pippin is led up a spiral stair by hands that push, not too hard, and a voice that murmurs, not unkindly. Such a small thing, the voice says. So curious. So very curious. He holds his curiosity like a shield. He answers questions with jokes until the jokes run out. He is not brave yet. He is stubborn. He is stubborn enough to not answer when a hand lowers a black cloth over his head, and the air inside that cloth tastes like betrayal. In the Golden Wood, Galadriel turns in her mind the question asked above the river in winter. Who stilled the valley? Who whispered the river's secret name to the frost? She sees. She does not say. She watches the fire in the south and the white hand in the west, and understands how alliances can be forged, not only by oaths, but by the exchange of bad words, taught like knives. Gandalf comes on the back of a wind from the north. He is not so bright as he will be, but he is not the grey shadow he was. He is not late. He finds a valley ruined and a bridge broken, and Glorfindel's body borne to a place of rest that is neither river nor fire. He kneels and puts his hand on the cold brow and bows it. He gets up and does not waste anger on cursing. He turns east. He is a line drawn across a page that has too many smudges, and he wants to make one clear stroke. He finds them at the Golden Wood's edge, and there is grief waiting. He stands very still while Aragorn tells him what happened in words that never stumble. When Aragorn has finished, he lowers his head. He does not scold. He does not console. "She chose," he says, very softly. "I will not demean that with anger at fate." He takes Pippin's name into his hand like a tool. "Isengard," he says, and the word is both a statement and a destination. I will go there. He will be needed in the south. Aragorn lifts his head. "They're all things run to the south," he says. "That is where rivers go," Gandalf says, and allows himself a very thin smile. They do not rest long. Time has become a rope that pulls and burns as it pulls. Upon boats carved like leaves, they slip onto the Anduin. Galadriel stands on the bank and raises a hand. She looks at Frodo a last time, and the look is not tempted or tempting, merely the weighing of a thing that can break and still do what a world asks it to. "Do not look into the water when the moon is rising," she says, and he nods because he does not know how to argue with something that is both a woman and a season. They pass under the eaves of the wood and into reaches of river that feel larger and lower. Above, on high banks, strange eyes watch. Uruks that do not mind the sun so much as their grandfathers. Men with crude marks painted on their faces. Birds that are not birds. They do not yet see the white horse that will ride into the west with a man in a white cloak upon it and a small figure behind him. But the road is forming under daytime in the way it does when those who can make roads do not sleep. At the Great Falls, the company draws the boats ashore and looks west at a wall of rock and east at a trail that climbs into brush and goes nowhere good. "We must decide," Aragorn says, when what he means is I am not ready to decide. He is thinking of a path that goes to a city where a steward waits to either break or be broken. He is thinking of a small hand and a small stubborn voice. He is thinking of the one who fell into fire and his throat closes. Boromir walks with Frodo into the trees. He does not mean to do anything dishonorable. He means to plead. "Come to my city," he says, in a voice that has begged no one for anything since he was a boy and his brother was 3. "Let us have one victory before all become ashes." His hand comes up of its own accord. He stops it a breath from the small figure's chest. "Forgive me," he says. "I would take it from you because my people's towers are the last stars I can save." Frodo steps back. "I cannot," he says. He does not say it unkindly. He says it the way a door says it cannot turn into a window just because someone asks. He turns away and his feet choose between east and west. He goes up. He goes toward the summit where a seat waits for watchers, and he does not sit. He takes the ring from around his neck and slips it onto his finger because he is small and the world is large, and he wants to see his way. Boromir calls his name, and the wind takes the word and gives it to nothing. He staggers in a circle like a man who has been struck, and there was no hand. He sits down with his head in his hands. He does not know he will die in an hour with more arrows in him than any man should be able to carry. He thinks he has done his worst to the wrong person. He has not. Redemption walks toward him in the shape of 20 Uruks with a clear intention and a horn that is only in his memory now. At the boats, Maelchon has his hood up and his hand closed around something small and sharp. He is sweating. He thinks only of a girl's face in the dark and a voice that whispered to him that there are many ways to keep a child from crying. He hates that voice, the way drowning men hate water. He looks at Samwise, and then at the rope that ties the boats. He glances at the shorter hobbit's pack. He moves. "Do not," Legolas says without turning his head. Maelchon freezes. Legolas' arrow does not move. It does not have to. "Tell him," Legolas continues, very calm. "Tell him what weight is in your pocket." Maelchon puts his hand in his pocket and takes out a piece of twisted metal that looks like nothing until a certain kind of mind sees it, and then it becomes the world. "They would have killed her," he says. "They said they would let her go if I opened a door." His voice breaks. "They killed her anyway." He moves like a man who is going to put the metal down. His fingers twitch. The metal falls. In the bushes, something breathes. The air goes taut. The first arrow takes Boromir in the shoulder. He keeps his footing because his whole body has been training for pain for years. He lifts his sword and steps in front of two hobbits with no hesitation left anywhere in him. The second arrow goes into his ribs, and he is surprised by how little breath he has after that. He tries to blow the horn that is not at his belt. He laughs instead, because there is a horrible joke in that. He swings once, twice, and a black hand loses its spear. The third arrow takes him in the gut. He does not fall yet. He kills two more, because the body can do what the mind thinks it cannot when it is defending something it would die for. He shouts. He is not ashamed of the shout. "Run," Aragorn says, and Frodo runs, Sam behind him. "No," Sam says. "No, Mr. Frodo. I am coming with you." He says it with the fury of a man who refuses death its choice. They go to the river's edge and take a boat and push into current without even thinking about oars. The current decides. Legolas and Gimli stand back to back. Arrows hiss around them like angry insects. Aragorn sees Boromir go to his knees, and something in him gives way. He goes through 5 uruks as if they are reeds. He reaches Boromir and pulls the third arrow. "They took them," Boromir tries to say. Blood bubbles. "They took the small ones." "Which?" Aragorn asks, and he is not ready for the answer. "The grey-eyed one and the angry one," Boromir says, and tries to laugh again. "Not the ring." He reaches for his sword, and Aragorn puts it into his hand. He dies with his hand wrapped around something it was built for. Aragorn closes his eyes and says a name for him that is not a prayer, because he knows how many of those work. They do not chase Frodo, because that would be madness now. They chase a column of uruks running west into the wild away from the river. "They took them that way," Maelchon says, and his voice is a thread. "I will go alone if I must." "You will not," Aragorn says. "You will not do anything alone from now on." They run until their feet turn to fire and the trees lean. Far to the south, Gandalf rides into a hall that looks as if it has forgotten laughter. He lifts a staff and speaks, and something like a cloud in a man's face dissolves. A king breathes. He stands straighter, his eyes clear. He feels winter and does not despair. He laughs. He laughs when he hears of a valley lost, because that is how a man cries when he has to keep his people from understanding how much they are in danger. "Who froze the river?" Theoden asks, when the council is over and the fire is low. "Not the one in the east," Gandalf says. His hand was elsewhere. He lent a word to someone who thought he could hold it like a tool and not like a snake. The white that stains the west did it. The river was given its name by generosity. It was closed by envy. Theoden's mouth hardens. He has heard of envy. He has known his share. He calls for Eomer and speaks quietly. There will be riders on the Eastmark before dawn. Into the shadowed hills of the Emin Muil go two small shapes with a hunger behind them that walks like a dog that was beaten and does not know how to stop loving the hand that beat it. Gollum crawls down a rock face like a lizard and smells the air near a pool of standing water and whines. "We go this way," he says, and his voice is oil and thirst. "No, not that way. The eye eats that way." He points southeast and smiles a little to himself, because kindness is a thing he has forgotten how to trust, and betrayal a thing he remembers before breakfast. In the White City, a steward pinches the bridge of his nose and says to a man with eyes that have looked at priests and laughed and cried in the same breath, "Find him?" And that man bows. Faramir leaves with lightness in his step that denies what he is walking toward. He crosses over stone that in spring will shine. He tells himself a story about two small people near a river. He believes his own story. He always has. At Isengard, De Pippin learns two kinds of silence. The silence of stone that has decided not to speak, and the silence of hearts that have learned it is safer to be slow. He meets eyes in the shadows that have green in them. He does not understand what he is seeing. He is very thirsty. When a man in white with eyes like knives bends over him and says, "Tell me about the hill with the party under it," Pippin shakes his head and says, "I will tell you about a rabbit who outran a hawk. The Ents will come." Not because a halfling tricks them into caring, but because even very slow things cannot be told too many times that their friends have been burned to ash without deciding they are angry. They will find a stray hobbit and put him on a shoulder and tell him about the days when their voices made the world change shape. He will listen because he does not know how not to listen when something older than rivers is speaking. Under the grey cliffs of Henneth Anun, Faramir will meet two small figures and a third who is not small in his own mind. He will listen when the gardener speaks with his hands clenched and his heart open. He will see the ring, and he will decide without any triumph not to take it. He will have heard by then that Imladris is ashes. He will choose to be the man who does not add another ruin to that list. He will send them on and watch them go with love and something that is like pain, but not precisely. Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and Maelchon run the plains and are swallowed by a sea of grass that sighs at night. They meet riders with hair like wheat that has seen storms and eyes like sky under cloud. Eomer looks at them and sees truth branded on their faces. He believes their story not because it is possible, but because it fits the way the world smells this week. Together, they run down a column of uruks and find on the edge of a forest their camp broken and two sets of small footprints leading into trees that seem to breathe. "Not White Hand," Eomer says, pushing a skull with his boot. "Not all of them. The red eye is here too. He does not spit. He is courteous even when he is angry." He looks at Aragorn and sees a man walking toward an either slash or he has not chosen yet. "We will ride with you to your war," he says, "because it is easier than looking east, where his own war will rise like summer storm. Then we will go to ours." They do not find Merry because Merry is under stone far to the north, with songs spoken for him by voices that can make the air cry. They do not find Pippin because Pippin is learning to say the word fire with fear and laughter in the same syllable. They find a broken belt and a leaf-shaped brooch. He is a fighter, Gandalf will say later, turning that brooch over in his hand. He will fight. He will survive. He will then be proved right in a way that hurts more than being wrong. Helm's deep holds. The wall stands under rain that seems sent by an enemy. Arrows break. Hands throw stones from the parapet with the accuracy of those who have been throwing stones at wolves since they were children. At dawn, a horn sounds on the ridge, and those who hear it feel as if their grandfathers just walked back into the room. The valley fills with riders. The sun finds their hair. The white hand breaks. The Ents walk to Isengard and turn a wizard's garden into a pool. The river's voice there becomes a roar that covers apologies, lies, and proud words. Pippin sits on a broken stair with water lapping at his toes and listens to the sound of a tower looking surprised. He warms his hands around a cup and tells himself a story about a friend who died to save his back. He does not know yet that Merry is gone. He sips and his hands shake, and he blames the cold. Gandalf stands in a street of white stone and tells Denethor a story about faith that makes no promises. Denethor listens and hears only that it will hurt. He sends Faramir to die and resents him for returning. Pippin kneels and offers himself because that is what you do when you owe a debt to someone who will not let you repay it to their face. He stands on a wall at dawn and looks toward a black land that looks back. He sings to a boy beside him who is shaking so hard he cannot hold his spear. In Lothlorien, Elrond sits under branches that loved the one he loved and looks at his hands. He is alive. He is wounded in a way no healer can heal. He hears the song the Golden Wood sings for his daughter. He does not cry. He whispers her mother's name once. He thinks of a ship that has not unmoored yet. He does not go to it. He waits. He waits because he needs to know whether winter will end or only become visibility. At the Anduin's eastern bank, out of the Emin Muil, come two small figures, and a third that is one and two at once. A path opens, a stair, a tunnel, a hollow, a dark. A light goes out. It comes back. A hand is pierced and keeps holding. A sword is thrown aside because a gardener is not a soldier, and he makes his own rules about what must be done. At the top of a black stair, a spider like a hill meets courage like a lantern. The lantern shakes and shines. The spider is stabbed, and the world shifts an inch to the better. Sam sits on a rock in a barren land and holds his master's hand and thinks it is cold because he believes what fear tells him. He takes the ring because he has to. He does not take it for himself. He takes it like a man takes a baby out of a burning house when he does not have a plan for getting it through the next door. He carries it, and the world turns heavy. He goes forward anyway. He is not brave in the way that makes songs. He is brave in the way that makes gardens possible when the war is over. Aragorn stands with a black stone in his hand and talks to a presence that does not care whether he is right. He has a sword that sings again because elven hands in a golden wood have done what time could not. He has a banner that speaks without wind. He calls the dead, and they answer because sometimes the world owes debts that only the living can collect. He rides a path under a mountain and comes out into foam and salt, and the gulls cry. And it is the first time he allows himself to imagine stepping into a city as something other than a helper. He calls himself not king, but captain, when he stands under the shadow of the black gate and speaks into the wind that carries ash, because names now are only as large as the speaker's deeds. He draws the eye away. He feels it. It burns. He does not flinch. Legolas stands beside him with an arrow nocked for 3 hours without letting the string slack. Gimli taps his hand on his axe and hums a song that was old when men learned to shape metal. Eomer's horse stamps and his breath fogs, and the man on him feels like summer in the mouth of winter. "We are too few," someone whispers. "We are enough to matter," someone else answers. The eye turns. It moves. Far inside a mountain, a creature gloats. Far in the dust, a gardener stands up after falling and looks at a tower, and it looks like a finger pointing at him. He sets his sleeve firmer. He lifts his friend. "I cannot carry it," he says, and sets his shoulder under the man's chest. "But I can carry you." He lifts, and his knees almost give. He takes a step. He takes another. The world does not end in this step. That is everything. How much choice does a small creature have when the world has decided to be terrible? How much weight can a hand used to pruning roses carry before it becomes something else? What is left of home when home becomes a memory instead of a place? They climb. The mountain shakes. The eye wavers. A hand with 3 fingers closes on a throat. It bites. It laughs. It falls with its prize into fire and laughs again when the prize burns it, and it smiles while falling, because to have again what you loved once more, even for an instant, even if it kills you, sometimes feels like a win. The eye becomes a scream, and then nothing. The tower that is a finger collapses, and the hand it was part of is dust. The black gate opens because it has nothing left to guard. The airs shift. Ye men on the plain gasp, as if someone has taken a cord from around their necks. Gandalf rides a great bird over a river of lava in the shape of a city, and plucks 2 small figures from the lip of a destruction so wide that even a Maya hesitates. He sets them down in soft wood and a clear stream, and the sound of leaves moving without fear. When they wake, later, in a city that has forgotten how to be ruled and is learning, everyone is there who can be there. Not her. She is in the mountain. The room is full of happiness and grief taking turns. Pippin survives the fire of the city with smoke in his lungs and a new humility in his laugh. He looks at a steward's pyre and hates and forgives in the same day. He stands in a hall where the throne has been empty for generations and blinks when a man with a ranger's hands and a king's gaze kneels before him to thank him for saving his friend. He swallows and nods and thinks, "I am smaller than everything," and decides to live anyway. Mary's grave under the stone up north becomes a place where the wind sounds kinder than it does 10 feet away. The cook from the valley goes there and sets a piece of honey cake on the grass. She stands for a while with her hands wrapped in her apron and says nothing. Elladan puts a hand on her shoulder. She does not jump. She is used to hands that do not mean harm. She walks back down the hill with lighter steps. Elrond sails when the ship is ready. He goes down the river and does not look back until the last green hills are behind. None he looks once then, and sees a valley that has a faint mist over it that is not smoke and not rain. He does not trust himself to understand what that mist is. He puts a hand on the rail and thinks about his children, all his children, the ones who chose mortal, the ones who did not. He says his wife's name in his mind and hears it returned from a far shore that is not this one. Aragorn is crowned with a simple circlet, and a city breathes differently the next day. He walks under the branches of a white tree that is not yet blooming, and touches a small scar on his hand where a hobbit's blade once bit him in another story that refuses to be replaced. He opens his eyes and does not see Rivendell when he thinks of home. He thinks of road. He thinks of a voice singing on a bridge and will not let the memory turn him into a statue. He marries no one. He becomes the kind of king who knows that love can be chosen in silence. He rides north occasionally and stands at the lip of a valley where new trees are trying to take root in old ash. The Shire is saved not by a captain riding with a shining sword, but by stubbornness wearing aprons. Ruffians come. They meet hedges that seem to grow hands and pull them off their feet. They meet farmers who know how to stand in rows and push. They meet a mayor who keeps lists. In the end, they meet sorrow in the shape of a pipe that never gets lit again, because the person who would have lit it is teaching his grandchildren how to plant potatoes. The Shire recovers. It remembers anyway. Legolas builds a boat. He takes Gimli to a place where the sea sounds like a harp that never tires. And the dwarf laughs in the face of elves who look at him with surprise. He does not live to see the seabirds close up, but he teaches himself to love them as if he had. He is content more often than not. He visits the White City with a friend whose beard grows whiter and whiter, and who keeps making new songs about kings who learned how not to become tyrants. He drinks red wine with a steward who is not tormented by visions he should not have sought. Maelchon dies on a road in Anorion with his back to a cart that holds 3 children and their mother. He is not cowardly. He goes forward until he cannot. He kills 2 men who deserve it, and then another who maybe did not. His hand finds the twisted metal in his pocket, and he smiles, because he has been carrying his guilt like a stone all this time. And he is finally tired enough to set it down. What is remembered of Rivendell when it is gone? Do songs fill silence, or does silence swallow them? How long does it take for a river that was made to speak to find its voice again after it has been stilled by a foreign word? Who tells children about a place they never saw and makes them miss it anyway? In time, new leaves creep over blackened rock. The pines do not come back where they were because something in the soil is altered. Birch finds a seam and pushes in pale fingers. There are nights when the wind comes down the gorge and makes a sound that is not howling and not song. Old men in Bray talk about a valley east of the road where they heard laughter when no one was there. A shepherd from the Angle brings his flock under larches at dusk and swears he saw under the largest an arch that led nowhere and everywhere. In the library that is no longer there, a single stone remains of a shelf that was dear to a scholar whose name is as light as a leaf now. Someone has carved into it, with a dull blade, a line. The hand that carved is not skilled. The line is straight, and that is enough. It begins at the floor and goes up until the stone ends. Children years later will put their fingers in that groove and say, "This much and no more," and not know what they are echoing. The river runs again. It could not be kept silent. There are spring mornings when mist rises and the sun turns the mist to gold, and for a breath, the air tastes like honey on toast in a warm kitchen. And a woman with flour on her hands looks up from kneading and does not know why she is suddenly afraid and content in the same heartbeat. The water glides over stones that once were blades. The stones now are merely stones. Night falls on a valley that will never be exactly what it was. Stars come out and lean. A breeze moves. Somewhere a harp string vibrates once, then twice, and then stops as if a hand rested on it gently. On the bank where a house had stood, the black stump of a roof post catches moonlight and looks for all the world like a finger pointing at the sky, asking, without anger, whether the light still cares. The light answers by shining. The post does not move. The wind rises and carries the smell of wet stone and old smoke. The last thing seen before dawn is the sheen of a thin black plate beneath the waterline, frozen years ago and never entirely melted. Reflecting the first star, and the last thing heard is the soft, tired, unending voice of the river speaking to itself under ash.